The fire is low, the coals are dim. A cool hush settles over the land. In the distance, mountains sleep beneath the stars, and somewhere a narrow path winds through the hills, toward a land of warriors, toward Sparta. Before we take that path tonight, take a moment. I want to know where you are right now. Are you curled up in bed, maybe lying back on the couch? Is it midnight, or 3 a.m., or a quiet afternoon with gray skies? Wherever you are, however you feel, I'm glad you're here. This is my first ever video on this channel, and that means something. So thank you, truly. If you find comfort in what we're building here, if it helps you sleep, helps you unwind, or even just make the world feel a little quieter for a while, I'd be grateful if you left a comment, or leave a like, or even subscribe. But no pressure. Let's just walk for now. Tonight, you will walk that path, slowly, gently. We will step into a place often told with shouts and swords, but tonight we tell it in silence, in the rhythms of old boots, and the echoes of empty mess halls. This is not the story of glory. This is the story of bodies, of burdens, of quiet control, of lives built for something larger than themselves, then forgotten, erased, remembered only in ruin. Sparta was a name that once held weight, but what was it like, really, to live beneath that name, to breathe it, to carry it like a shield, from the time you were a child, until the last sound you heard was a command? Let us begin there, with the child. It begins at 7. That is when they take you. That is when the world changes. You are not taken with violence. There is no shouting, no door ripped from its hinges. It happens quietly, with ceremony, with the weight of tradition. You are led away, your feet still small, your hands still unsure. You do not understand what is happening, but you are told this is right, that this is what must be. Your mother's face is unreadable. Her eyes do not move. Her mouth is set. She does not touch you. That too is part of the teaching. You are not to be softened by farewell. You are not to remember warmth. You walk, your small body dwarfed by the path. The city rises behind you, ahead, a new world. You step into the agoge. It is not a school, not a camp, not a home. It is something else, something colder, something quieter. You are placed in a barrack, a long room, low roof, stone walls. The air smells of sweat, of earth, of old wool. The bed is a pile of reeds. You are told to gather your own. You are told to sleep on them. You are told not to complain. There are other boys. They do not speak to you. They glance. They size you up. They test your movements, how you carry yourself, how you react to pain, to hunger, to loneliness. In the agoge, everything is a lesson. Everything is a test. The clothes you wear are rough. One cloak, one tunic, thin, unwashed. You are given no shoes. Your feet bleed, then callous. You are not permitted to bathe often. Dirt becomes part of you. It settles in your pores. It hardens your skin. The food is simple. Barley, broth, a bitter cheese. Sometimes nothing. You eat quickly, without pleasure. You are still hungry. Always hungry. That hunger becomes your companion. You are told to steal. You are told to find food, not for disobedience, but for skill, for cunning. If you are caught, you are punished, not gently, not privately. You are made an example, struck in front of the others, told to endure, told to learn. Pain is everywhere, but it is not chaos. It is ritual, controlled, administered like a lesson. You begin to see its rhythm. You begin to predict its arrival. You begin to mold yourself around it. The days are long, but not busy. There is space between the tasks, long moments of waiting. You sit on a stone bench. You listen for footsteps. You feel the wind through the gaps in the stone. You learn to wait, to be still, to expect nothing. You are trained to run, to climb, to fight, but always within control. Wildness is not permitted. Emotion is not permitted. Even anger must be quiet, precise, useful. Your voice is measured. You are taught to speak only when needed. Your answers must be short, exact. No embellishment, no flourish. You are given phrases, ancient sayings. You repeat them. You learn their cadence. You make them part of you. At night, you sleep beside other boys, close, for warmth, for safety. You feel their breath. You hear their murmurs. You learn their names, their fears, their dreams. But you do not speak of your own. You are watched, always watched, not just by your trainers, but by the older boys. They are allowed to strike you. They are allowed to command you. They are watching for weakness, and you are watching them. Trust is a luxury. You learn to calculate, to speak carefully, to move with caution, and yet bonds do form, quietly. Two boys might share food, might guard each other's sleep, might walk beside each other when the others march ahead. It is not affection, not love. It is alliance. It is survival. The walls of the agoge seem to shift over time. What once felt vast now feels enclosing. What once felt foreign becomes routine. You know the crack in the far corner, the stone that is warmer than the rest, the sound the wind makes in winter. Time moves strangely. There are no holidays, no birthdays, only seasons, only tasks, only discipline. Sometimes you are made to compete, wrestling, racing, fighting. The others cheer, but not loudly, always within limits. You are not supposed to delight in victory, nor despair in loss. You are supposed to be steady, stoic, controlled. Punishments vary, sometimes a beating, sometimes a silence, sometimes a task meant to humiliate. You clean the stones with your hands. You kneel in the cold water. You stand in place while the others eat. The trainers do not hate you, but they do not love you. Their eyes are empty, their voices flat. They are enforcers, not guides. When one boy breaks, when he runs, when he weeps, the others look away. That boy is removed, quickly, without word. His name is not spoken again. You learn from this. You hold your tears inside. You press them deep. You build a wall around your thoughts. You show nothing some nights. You dream of your mother, of the sound of her voice, of the warmth of her hand. You wake before dawn. You shake it off. You rise. You prepare for inspection. The older you grow, the harder the training becomes. But it is not the tasks that wear you down. It is the sameness, the endless echo of each day, the ritual, the discipline, the silence. And yet, you become something new. Your shoulders square. Your gait steadies. You endure without complaint, but part of you is gone. The child who arrived, the child who looked back one last time at his village, that child no longer exists. You are Spartan. You wear the red cloak. You carry the wooden staff. You eat the same food. You march in the same rhythm. You are ready for war, even if war never comes. You are shaped for obedience, even if no command is given. You are part of something larger. You are the result of centuries, of tradition, of law, of fear. You are not asked what you want. You are not told what you are becoming. You are only told to endure. And so you do, again and again and again, until you cannot remember a time before, until even your dreams forget your name, until silence feels like home, until pain becomes your language, until obedience is all that remains, until Sparta claims you fully and never lets go. You wake before the sun, not because you want to, not because of a bell, but because your body has learned. You rise when the light has not yet come, when the air is still, when your breath is the only sound. You move quietly, you do not speak. No one does. The other boys stir, shift, dress in silence. The cloak goes over the shoulder. The tunic remains unchanged, rough, worn, thin, still damp from yesterday's rain. You line up, not with fanfare, not with shouting, just a quiet shuffle into place. You know where to stand, who stands before you, who stands behind. There is no talking, no instruction, just expectation. The trainer appears, a tall man, weathered, his face unreadable. He walks the line, slowly, watching your posture, your expression, your hands. One boy sneezes, another blinks too long. They are pulled aside, set apart, not harshly, just ... removed. The lesson begins early. Even blinking can be wrong. You are sent to run barefoot across gravel, across mud, over roots and stone. Your legs know the path. Your soles know the pain. You do not cry out. Not anymore. When you fall, you rise. When you falter, you speed up. When you tire, you ignore it. This is not for strength, not really. It is for obedience, for discipline, for rhythm. The day unfolds in small rituals. You practice holding your shield, though it is wood, though it is heavy. You hold it still. You learn not just to carry it, but to become part of it. The spear comes later, but not too late. You are shown how to hold it, how to thrust, slowly, repeatedly. You aim for the same mark on the post, again and again and again. The wood dents, your shoulder burns, your fingers blister. But the instructor says nothing. He watches, he waits. The silence speaks for him. Meals are brief, no tables, no chairs. You squat, you eat fast, you do not savor. There is nothing to savor. The black broth is bitter, the bread is dry, the meat is rare, and yet you eat it, you need it. You glance at the boy next to you. He does not look back. He is guarding his food. Stealing becomes the lesson. At night, after the fire dims, after the last inspection, some boys creep out, quietly, moving like shadows. They search for roots, for eggs, for unattended scraps near the kitchens. If they succeed, they eat in silence. If they fail, the punishment is swift and public. It is never the theft that angers, it is the failure to do it well. You learn to be clever, to be fast, to be invisible. The agoge teaches this in layers, not just strength, not just pain, but survival. There are lessons in endurance, but there are also lessons in betrayal. You are told to lie, to mislead, to outwit. One day you are paired with another boy. You are told to watch him, report on him. Days later, he is whipped, and you are praised. The next week, he is told to watch you. No one is safe, not really. And that is the point. Friendship exists, but it is cautious, conditional. You learn to read faces, to measure tone, to hide your own thoughts deep beneath stillness. And still, there are moments, quiet ones, when a boy helps another to his feet, when a cloak is shared without words, when two boys laugh, just once, just briefly, before remembering the rules. The Spartans call it endurance, call it loyalty, call it shaping warriors, but to live it, to live each hour inside the agoge, is to live without softness, without margin. There are tests, always tests, sometimes physical. You are thrown into cold water, told to stand in it, to hold your breath, to hold a stone above your head, sometimes mental, a question asked with no clear answer, but only one answer that is correct. Sometimes it is just waiting, stillness, hours of it, kneeling, hands behind your back straight, eyes open, and always the watching. The older boys, called arenas, are not your friends. They are enforcers. They remember their own training, and they pass it on with pride. One strikes you with a rod, not out of anger, but because you stumbled. You nod, you accept, you continue. This too is the way. You are brought before elders. From time to time, you stand straight. You answer briefly. They test your posture, your gaze, your tone. A wrong answer means silence. A right answer means nothing. Only continuation. Every season, a new trial. In winter, you are made to sleep outside. No blanket, no fire. You curl against the stone. You learn how to breathe warmth into your own hands. In summer, you march for days across the hot plain. The dust coats your feet. Your tongue dries. You do not ask for water. You wait until it is given. The body suffers quietly. Some grow strong, fast, lean with muscle. Others shrink, pale eyes, hollow. No one speaks of those who disappear. The ones who do not return from patrol, or punishment, or illness. They vanish, and the training continues. You forget the names of the months. You do not ask the date. Time becomes a dull rhythm. Day, night, pain, rest, repeat. Sometimes, in rare moments, you are allowed to listen. An elder sits by the fire. He speaks of Thermopylae, of Leonidas, of the hot gates, of sacrifice. The others listen, still, eyes wide. These stories are not told with excitement, but with weight, with gravity. You are reminded for the phalanx, and yet you feel small. You feel tired. You feel the press of that duty on your young shoulders. You wonder what it is like to be free, to choose, to laugh, to sing. But these thoughts are fleeting. You bury them. You rise the next day. You fall into line. You carry your training as if it were a second skin. You do not know who you will become, only what you must be. And the agoge does not care who you were before, only that you endure, only that you break and rebuild and break again, until there is nothing left but Sparta. He was not always a king. Once he was a boy, a brother, a second son, then a third, born to a world that valued strength over sentiment, endurance over affection. Sparta raised him not to feel, but to withstand. He entered the agoge like every other Spartan male. No ceremony, no special title, just a name, just another child among many. He slept on reeds, fought for food, bit down on pain until it passed like wind through stone. Leonidas learned early that to survive in Sparta was not to cry out, but to quiet the cry within. The world he knew taught stillness, still hands, still gaze, still voice. Each morning began with cold water, a barked order, a run before dawn, his feet bloodied from rock, his tunic thin in winter. Hunger was a daily presence, not the kind that begged, but the kind that dulled. Slow, creeping, a patient teacher when he grew stronger. He fought better, not because he was angry, but because he learned control. He learned the rhythm of pain, the slow breath before the strike, the moment to hold and then to release. He did not seek command. It came to him because he endured. He did not shout, so others listened. He did not boast, so others watched. In time, A king died. Another brother rose, then fell. Leonidas took the mantle, not as a prize, but as a burden. A quiet duty he wore like his cloak, not heavy, but constant. The Persian threat rose like smoke before fire. Whispers at first, ships on the horizon, envoys with gold and threats, then armies, great ones, more than the Greeks had ever seen. Xerxes wanted submission. He sent men to demand it, sent threats wrapped in silk, promises of wealth, promises of mercy. Sparta answered not with a roar, but with a pause. Ritual required patience, consultation with oracles, signs from the gods, deliberation by old men in shaded halls. Leonidas did not wait for certainty. He asked for volunteers. He chose 300 men, all fathers, all prepared to leave a legacy behind. Their sons would carry on the name, the line, the city. They did not bring excess, no luxury, just what they needed to walk, to eat, to fight. Red cloaks, bronze shields, short swords dulled at the hilt from use. They did not sing, they marched in silence, past olive groves, through narrow mountain roads, past villages whose people fell quiet as the soldiers passed. Children stared from doorways, women watched from behind low stone walls. The men of Sparta did not wave, but some nodded, a small gesture, a brief moment of softness beneath steel. Leonidas walked among them, not ahead, not apart. He ate the same food, slept on the same ground. His eyes scanned the horizon, even in rest. At night, the firelight revealed faces drawn by thought, men sharpening blades by muscle memory, others staring into nothing, their minds far from the warmth of the flames. They reached Thermopylae as the sun slipped behind the ridges. The cliffs loomed tall, jagged and quiet. The sea beside them breathed in waves, a constant sound, a kind of lullaby for those with nowhere else to sleep. Leonidas surveyed the pass, narrow, perfect. The ground was dry, firm, no room for flanking, no space for the massive Persian force to spread wide. It was here, in this funnel, that numbers meant little. They set camp, not elaborate, just enough. Shields leaned against rocks, spears stuck into the ground, fires low. The Spartans did not seek comfort, they sought readiness. Scouts brought word of the approaching enemy, thousands, tens of thousands, then more. The Persians came slowly, but with purpose. Dust clouds marked their movement before the men were seen. The earth trembled beneath them. The Spartans did not flinch. For days, the Persians watched, tried to intimidate, sent offers. Lay down your arms, kneel, be spared. Leonidas sent back 5 words. Come and take them. He did not say them in fury. He said them like a stone says nothing to the sea, unmoved, firm. The enemy waited, perhaps to wear them down, perhaps out of arrogance. The Spartans waited better. They trained, they rotated shifts, they rested in order. They oiled their shields, they recited formations. Leonidas visited each man daily, sat beside them, spoke little, sometimes not at all. Presence was enough. They drew strength from the fact that their king was not behind them, but beside them. They spoke of home, of boys in training, of wives who knew what silence meant, of vineyards that would be pruned in their absence. Each word was a thread, a stitch in the shared fabric that would hold them in the fight to come. Then, at dawn, the horns sounded. The Persians came in waves, light infantry first, rushing into the pass, hoping to overwhelm, hoping to crush the wall of shields. The Spartans absorbed it with precision, with timing, They did not break. They did not chase. They held, shield to shield, shoulder to shoulder. The line was not muscle, it was discipline. Leonidas stood with them, not behind, not apart. He thrust, he blocked, he turned in rhythm with the men beside him. The battle lasted for hours, the air filled with dust, with the cries of wounded men, with the sound of metal on metal, then metal on bone. When the first wave faltered, another came, then another. They fought all day, then rested under the moon. Their armor stiff with sweat, their hands blistered, but their line unbroken. The next day, the same. Then, on the third day, a Greek trader showed the enemy a path around the cliffs. Leonidas received the news without change of expression. He gathered his officers, spoke plainly. The pass would be lost. The end was near. He allowed others to leave. Thespians remained. So did some Thebans. They would all face what came that night. Fires were few, voices softer still. No man asked to go. No man begged for mercy. Leonidas visited each cluster. He remembered names, asked about sons, about home, not as a distraction, but as a reminder of what they were giving, of what they carried. Before dawn, they lined up again, but this time they did not wait. They advanced, not a charge, but a slow, measured push. They struck first, with precision, with resolve. Each step forward was a message. We are not here to survive. We are here to stand. The Persians hesitated, then surged. The Spartans held again, then bent, then split, not from fear, but from force. One by one, they fell. Leonidas fought to the last, surrounded by those he knew, those who chose to die where they stood. His body was pierced, but not broken. He did not cry out. He did not fall apart. He simply fell into the dust among brothers. His men gathered around his body, not to mourn, but to protect, to shield. Even in death, the enemy overwhelmed them. But they did not break the line, only stepped over its remains. When it ended, the silence returned. Birdsong, the slow sound of the tide, a gull overhead, the creak of scorched wood. The Persians buried nothing. They marched on, but the pass was not empty. The stones remembered. The wind through the cliffs carried the tale of a man who was not born to rule, but who chose to lead, not with speeches, but with presence, not with fury, but with stillness. Leonidas remains, not as a statue, but as a rhythm, in the stories told by firelight, in the silence between words, in the breath taken before battle. He is there, waiting still, as the sea whispers, and the hills sleep. You do not see them in statues. You do not read their names in histories, but they were always there, living, working, waiting, watching. They were the Helots, not quite slaves, not quite citizens, not free, not entirely owned, bound to the land, bound by war, born into silence, forced into labor. They outnumbered the Spartans by many times, yet had no voice, no place, no recognition. To be a Helot was to belong to the earth, and yet never benefit from its fruit. The soil you tilled was not yours. The barley you harvested was not yours. The flocks you raised, the wine you pressed, the children you bore, all existed under the shadow of Sparta, all for its benefit. You rose before the sun, the air cool, the fields quiet. You walked barefoot on the hard-packed paths. You carried tools made by your own hands, a hoe, a basket, a knife. You worked without question. You worked without rest. The harvest was measured, counted, watched. The Spartiate master took what he needed, what he wanted, what was expected. You were left with the rest, and some years there was nothing left at all. The Helots were born in places conquered long ago, Messenia, Laconia, rich lands, once free, once ruled by others, then taken, through violence, through siege, through blood. Those who lived were spared, but not liberated. They were assigned to lands, assigned to Spartan families, treated as extensions of property, as human livestock, as tools that breathed. No one asked them to swear loyalty. That was not needed, only obedience, only presence. Each year, the war against the Helots was declared. The ephors stood before the Spartan assembly, and they spoke the words, a formality, a tradition, but not an empty one. That declaration made all Helots legal enemies of the state, which meant they could be killed without trial, without offense, without warning. And so the Cryptia was born. Spartan youths, chosen, selected, sent into the night, armed with knives, with orders not for open combat, but for something quieter, something darker. They hid in shadows, in fields, among trees. They watched the Helots as they worked, as they talked, as they moved. They looked for signs of pride, of confidence, of defiance. And when they saw it, they struck. No words, no ritual, no mercy. A man might vanish in the night. A boy might be found still, cold, in the morning. A wife might search for her husband and never find him again. The message was clear. Be small, be silent, be afraid. It worked, but not completely. The Helots learned to survive in ways quiet and clever. They kept their heads bowed, but they passed stories. They remembered. They carved symbols on stones. They sang low songs in dialects the Spartans had long forgotten. They raised children. They taught them not to trust, not to speak freely, but also not to forget. In the fields, they moved with rhythm, with purpose. They knew when to plant, when to reap, when to store, when to hide. They built walls from memory, shaped tools from iron and bone. They cooked stews that simmered for hours. Using herbs the Spartans never bothered to learn. Their homes were simple, mud walls, thatch roofs, dirt floors, but they were homes. They had warmth, they had scent, they had laughter, quiet but real. The Helots were not a single people, not one tribe. They came from many places, but they shared a fate, and over time, that fate became identity. Helot children learned early. They watched their parents labor, watched the way they avoided Spartan eyes, learned which words to use, which to hide. They knew not to cry too loud, not to run too far, not to question, but sometimes, in the quiet, they asked, why do they take everything? Why must we obey? Why do we live this way? And their parents had no easy answers, only stories about a time before, a time of kings with different names, a time when Messenia was not broken, when Laconia belonged to its own people, a time of freedom long buried. In those stories, hope flickered quietly. Helots served Spartan boys in their homes as attendants, as shadows, sharpened their spears, carried their burdens, listened to their arrogance, endured their cruelty. Sometimes the boys struck them for sport, for training, for no reason at all. Sometimes they ordered them to sing, to dance, to humiliate themselves, and they did, because refusal meant pain, or worse. But the Helots watched, they listened, they remembered. Some became too trusted, too close, and they learned things Spartans never meant to share. How frightened the boys were beneath the pride, how unsure, how shaped by fear, by fathers, by expectations, how brittle their world was. And the Helots held on to that knowledge as a weapon, as a comfort. Sometimes, very rarely, a Helot was freed for bravery, for service, for saving a Spartan life. But that freedom was never full. You were marked, always different, never Spartan, never truly accepted. Suspicion followed you, and most lived as they had before, just with fewer rules and no protection. There were uprisings, when Sparta faltered, when earthquakes shook the land, when fear opened cracks in the system. Then the Helots rose. They took arms, seized strongholds, defended themselves. They fought with fury, with memory, with the rage of generations. And for a time they held their own. But Sparta never forgot. Retaliation came, relentless, cold, systematic. Villages burned, crops destroyed, families scattered. And so the Helots returned to silence, but not to peace. Because silence does not mean consent. It means waiting. Even in quiet, they lived, they aged, they mourned, they married. They whispered prayers to old gods, to river spirits, to the memory of what had been. Their faith was different. Not the war gods of Sparta, not Ares, not Apollo, but older, earthbound, rooted in survival, in cycles, in seasons. At night, they gathered, around fire, around food, thin soups, coarse bread, shared bowls, shared stories. They spoke of ancestors, of fields, of distant mountains, of stolen freedom. There was music, made from flutes, from reeds, from string. Melodies, simple, melancholy, repetitive, comforting. Even in sorrow, there was life. Even in subjugation, there was identity. Even in darkness, there was firelight. This was their power, not resistance by sword, but resistance by existence. The Spartans feared them, not because they were strong, but because they endured. The Helots should have broken, but they did not. They raised children in captivity, but those children laughed, ran, learned, grew. They built families under threat, but those families held together. They had no voice in the assembly, but they remembered who they were, and that memory mattered. When Sparta declined, when its warriors grew fewer, when its laws turned brittle, when its enemies circled, the Helots remained, watching, waiting. They did not rebuild Sparta, but they outlasted it, because stones fall, shields rust, statues crumble. But those who remember, those who endure, they are never truly defeated. They simply remain, and one day they are remembered. But even the Helots had their moments. Moments in the olive groves, where the trees were older than Sparta itself, where light filtered through leaves like soft breath, where the air held no weight, where no Spartan foot disturbed the dust. They would rest there for a moment, for a breath, and feel, not free, but human. An old woman might hum a tune passed from her grandmother, a lullaby in a lost dialect. A child might laugh, briefly, before the mother hushed him, before the world remembered itself. They watched the stars. They knew the seasons better than any calendar, not by date, but by the wind, by the shift in the soil, the color of bark, the birds overhead. They knew when lambs were near, when the rains would come, when to plant early, when to delay. Their knowledge was deep, and it was quiet, the kind of knowledge that does not boast, but endures. Spartans did not ask them how the land breathed, but the Helots knew, and sometimes, in secret, they worshipped. Not in temples, not with gold, but with stones stacked in circles, with hands dipped in cold springs, with whispered prayers. In corners of the earth no soldier entered, to gods forgotten, or never named, to ancestors, long dead but never gone. These acts were quiet rebellions, proof that, even under domination, the soul could rise, could remember, could reach, but there was also fear, deep, constant, dripping through the days like water from a cracked jar. Every sound might mean danger, every rider might bring orders, every glance from a Spartan might turn cruel. Helot children were taught to move in silence, to always know the exits, to listen more than speak, to carry their burdens without complaint, to disappear if needed. Even weddings were quiet. No drums, no dancing, just the binding of hands, a whispered promise, a shared bowl, and then back to work. And yet they loved, fiercely, patiently. A man might walk 3 fields over just to see the woman he loved, just to pass her a fig or touch her sleeve. For a moment they smiled. These were not stories Sparta told, but they happened over and over. For centuries, Spartan boys heard whispers. Some feared the Helots, others mocked them, but always the threat was there. The numbers, the silence, the fact that the entire machine of Sparta rested on their backs, and should they shrug, everything would fall. The Helots never ruled, but they never vanished, and in that there was power. Their clothing was plain, worn cloth, sometimes patched, sometimes too small, but functional. They walked in sandals made of rough leather, or none at all, feet hardened by the fields, backs bent by labor, but their eyes were sharp. They told jokes, sometimes cruel, sometimes clever, about their masters, about fate, about the absurdity of power, but only when safe, only when sure no ears listened, and they sang low, drawn-out songs, with slow rhythms, meant to match the pace of labor, the pull of the hoe, the drag of a cart, songs that passed time, that passed memory. When one died, the others gathered, not in the open, but beneath trees, or behind walls. They spoke the name, even if it was forbidden. They remembered, because to forget was to lose everything. They watched Sparta age, change, decay. The warriors grew fewer, the laws tighter, the fear more visible, but still, the Helots remained. New names came, new battles, new kings, but under it all, the same hands planted barley, the same eyes watched the hills, the same dreams flickered. Freedom, maybe not for them, but for their children. Some fled when the chance came. During wars, rebellions, foreign invasions, they slipped away into other lands, became workers, traders, soldiers, storytellers, and they told of Sparta, not as legend, but as burden. They remembered it all, the blood, the fields, the nights, the silence, and in their remembering, they gave the Helots what Sparta never did, a place in history, not carved in stone, but passed in breath, in word, in firelight. And now, you remember them too, not just as background, not as footnotes, but as people, living, struggling, enduring, the true foundation of a city built on order, on fear, on silence. You are born beneath the same sky. The same sun warms your skin, but you are not a boy, and so your path is different. You are not sent away at 7. You are not beaten into silence. You are not marched to the agoge, but your life is not soft. You wake early with the sound of goats in the yard. Your breath is visible in the morning air. You stretch, you run, not because you are forced, but because you are trained from the beginning to be strong, to be swift, to be ready. You are a girl of Sparta. Your hair is short, your tunic loose, your steps wide. You walk tall. Your voice is loud and clear. You are taught to speak without fear, to stand without shame, to meet the eyes of men. Other Greek cities whisper about you. They say Spartan women are wild, that you laugh too freely, that you walk where men walk, that you speak in public, that you shame your husbands. But you are not wild. You are raised with purpose. You are taught to bear strong sons, sons who will not tremble, sons who will not flee, sons who will not cry out in pain. To do this, you must be strong yourself. Your mother shows you how to lift, how to throw, how to grip a discus, how to run through the dust without losing your breath. You wrestle with other girls, with boys, with wind and sun and dirt. You are trained to control your body, to master pain, to endure silence, and yet your voice matters. You ask questions. You speak in court. You own land. You inherit wealth. Your signature carries weight. In Sparta, you are not hidden behind walls. You are not cloistered in shadow. You are seen. At festivals, you race, you cheer, you dance in chorus. Your limbs strong, your rhythm sure. The air full of dust, laughter, applause. The boys watch, the old men nod. This is Sparta. Your father does not scold you for pride. He expects it. You eat at the family hearth, but your brother eats with his mess. You may only see him in passing. You grow apart, parallel, different, but bound. Your mother teaches you stories, not soft tales, but sharp ones, of war, of duty, of strength. She tells you of the women who stood by when the men marched away, who buried the dead, who raised sons to replace them, who never wept where others could see. You learn that beauty matters less than stature, than health, than clarity of speech. Your skin darkens in the sun. Your arms grow hard from work. You are proud. Marriage comes late. In other cities, girls marry at 12, at 13. In Sparta, you marry when you are grown, when your body is ready, when your limbs are strong enough to carry a child, to survive birth, to recover. You do not wait in veils. You do not bow your head. You choose, or are chosen. But you are not silenced. There is ceremony, but not excess. Sometimes the man steals you, symbolically, as tradition. He cuts your hair. You wear his cloak. You lie in darkness. He visits, rarely, always in secret. And then, one day, he stays. You become a wife. But you are not confined. He returns to the barracks, to the mess, to the duties of a Spartan warrior. You remain. You manage the household. You direct the slaves. You inspect the crops. You settle disputes. You oversee the family estate. You become the center of the oikos, the household. You are not idle. Other Greeks write of this with confusion or scorn. They call you unchaste, bold, too visible. But you are respected. You speak with other women, in circles, in whispers, in sharp instruction. You raise daughters like yourself, and sons. You raise them to leave you. You teach them not to cry, not to cling. When they are taken at 7, you do not weep, not in public, not before them. You tell them to return with their shield, or on it. That is what is remembered, that cold phrase, that sharp line. But there is love. You watch the hills. You wait for messengers. You listen for news. You dream of their return. You fear the knock on the door, the quiet voice, the folded cloak. Some nights you rise in the dark and sit beside the cold hearth, just to feel close, just to remember their small hands, the sound of their laugh before they were warriors. You are a widow, often before you are old. Sparta does not mourn with loud wails, but grief lives in the bones, in the space beside you at night, in the way you braid your hair, in the silence you carry. And yet you remain strong. You wear black, not with despair, but with dignity. You speak of duty, of sacrifice, of glory, but alone you whisper his name. You press your forehead to the doorframe. You feel the wind on your face, and remember the weight of his childhood body when he's still fit in your arms. You carry on. You raise the next child, the next niece, the neighbor's orphan. You train her as you were trained, to be proud, to endure. And so it continues. The Spartan woman, shaped by iron, but not of iron. You bend, but do not break. You live, not as shadow, but as structure. When Sparta falls, it is the women who remember, who tell the stories, who bury the dead, who keep the hearth lit, who speak the names, who carry Sparta forward, not with war, but with memory. And in the end, it is memory that lasts. You rise before the sun, the air is cold, the ground is hard beneath your bare feet. You pour water into a clay bowl. You wash in silence. You do not shiver. Spartan girls are not taught to flinch. They are taught to adapt. You dress quickly, a simple tunic, a belt at the waist, your arms bare. You run your hands through short hair, no ornament, no braid. You are not here to decorate the world. You are here to strengthen it. Outside, the sky is soft gray. You begin to run along the edge of the fields, past the walls, along the riverbank. Other girls join, some older, some younger. No one speaks. Your breath falls into rhythm, in, out, in, out. Each step, a lesson, discipline, endurance, quiet control. Later, you train with javelin, with discus, with hand-to-hand holds and counterholds. You are taught how to fall, how to land, how to rise again. You learn poise, not just in movement, but in silence, in posture, in listening, in Sparta. This is womanhood. You are taught to speak with clarity, to argue with precision. At home, you listen to your mother debate with elders. She does not whisper, she does not bow. She stands in the courtyard, her voice steady, her tone sharp. She owns land. She manages the workers. She handles disputes. Her word is final. And one day, you will do the same when guests come. You do not hide behind a screen. You do not lower your eyes. You sit, you listen, you speak when asked. Your voice is not a stranger to the open air. You are not a quiet ornament in the home. You are its axis, its command. The slaves move around you. They know your rhythm, your gestures. You direct the weaving, the grain, the daily pace. You learn to balance accounts, to plan stores, to measure oil, to record wool. It is not flashy, it is not celebrated, but without it, Sparta would not move. There is talk among older women, whispers of girls who failed to grow strong, who fell ill, who bore stillborns. They are not spoken of for long. There is sorrow, but there is also consequence. A weak mother, they say, builds a weak state. So you train harder. You eat barley, figs, cheese, olive oil. Spartan food is simple, sufficient, nothing more. You chew slowly with care. You are told to savor strength, not sweetness. One day you are chosen. A match is made. A man of age, of standing, of honor. You do not blush. You nod. You accept. The marriage is quiet, quick. A ritual of simplicity. The night is strange. There is no courtship, no courtly language, just the shape of duty, the echo of generations, the continuation of blood. You lie in darkness. You listen to his breath. You measure your own heartbeat. In the morning, you are alone. He returns to the barracks, the mess, the men. You rise. You return to the rhythm. Now you walk the fields with a longer stride. You issue orders with firmer tone. You measure out rations. You mend cloth. Time passes. You learn your body. You miss a cycle. You are with child. The news spreads like wind over wheat. Your mother nods. She does not cry, but her hand lingers longer on your shoulder. The pregnancy is hard. There are days when your breath is short, when your belly cramps, but you do not complain. You walk each morning. You stretch each limb. You whisper strength into the dark. When the time comes, you labor long. The walls feel close. The pain comes like waves. You grit your teeth. You focus on the breath, on the sound of your own heart. Then a cry. Then silence. He is weighed, bathed, wrapped. You hold him. You look at his hands, his eyes. You wonder who he will become. You know what comes next. You will raise him. You will teach him to speak clearly, to move well, to respect silence. But at 7, he will be taken. You rock him gently. You hum a rhythm, the same rhythm your mother hummed to you. He sleeps. Years pass. You give birth again. A daughter this time. She is loud, fierce. She kicks with purpose. You smile. Your son grows strong, quiet, watchful. He asks questions. He hides from the cold. He flinches at thunder. You steel him. You train him to face fear. Then the day comes. You dress him in his best. You hold his face in your hands. You tell him he is strong, that he will not cry, that he will make you proud. He nods, eyes wide, shoulders tight. They come for him. You do not kiss him goodbye. You nod. You stand tall, and when the door closes, you sit alone. You do not weep, but your breath shakes. You light the hearth. You prepare the evening meal. You stare at the space he left behind. You carry on. You attend the women's festivals. You wear white. You chant. You offer grain. You dance in circles around the ancient altar. The air smells of herbs, of ash, of time. You whisper prayers, not for wealth, not for peace, but for strength, for survival, for endurance. That is what Sparta needs. That is what you offer. You are not poet, not priestess, not queen, but you are the spine of the state. And when men fall, when sons do not return, when lines break, when the world shakes, it is the Spartan woman who holds the line, who binds the wound, who lights the fire, who says, simply, again. You wake with the sun. The city is still. You move quietly. You wash your face with cool water. You rub your eyes. You dress in the same garments you wore yesterday. Simple cloth, earth-toned, durable. The air smells faintly of ash and oil. Outside, the stone streets are still wet with dew. You are a Spartan man, but you are not free, not truly, not in the way others might think. You belong, always, to the group, the unit, the city, the state, and nowhere is this made clearer than at the mess. It is not a tavern, not a place of relaxation. It is not comfort. It is not choice. It is obligation, repetition, shared burden, each morning, after training, after drills, after a long walk back from the edge of the fields. You return to the same place, the station, the dining hall, the shared hearth. You enter. You bow your head slightly. You find your place on the woven mat. Always the same seat, the same men around you. There are 15 of you, sometimes 20, never fewer than 10. You eat together, always, until death or exile. There is no music, no laughter, no raised voices, only the scrape of ladles, the soft sound of chewing, the low murmur of voices. In front of you, a bowl, steam rising, black broth. You do not know what is in it, or rather you do, but you do not think about it. Pig's blood, vinegar, salt, bits of meat, bones simmered, long and slow. It is thick, dark, metallic on the tongue. It stains the lips, the teeth. But you eat slowly, respectfully. You dip the bread into it. You chew, you swallow. There are olives, barley bread, a little cheese, sometimes figs, but not always. Once, long ago, you asked why the food tasted like rust and rainwater. An older man looked at you. He said nothing, but the silence held you in place. You never asked again, because the mess is not about pleasure. It is about control, about memory, about endurance, about sameness. Every man contributes. You bring from your land, or from the Helots who work it, grain, wine, olives, oil, whatever is needed. If you cannot contribute, you are expelled. You eat alone, and in Sparta, to eat alone is to be already dead. So you give what you have. You do not withhold. You do not skimp at night. The mess is darker. Lamps flicker along the stone walls. The room smells of old wood, of smoke, of sweat. You sit again with the same men. Always the same. There is comfort in that. A strange, sharp-edged comfort. The food arrives. It is warm, barely. You begin to eat. No blessing, no toast, no prayer. But there is ritual. There is rhythm. The youngest speaks last. The eldest speaks first. If someone has returned from campaign, he speaks of the road, the fields, the battle, but softly, factually, never with flair, never with ego. You listen, you learn sometimes. There are arguments over rations, over grain, over tone, but they are settled quickly, with a glance, a hand gesture, a nod, because this place is sacred, not in the way temples are sacred, but sacred through repetition, through weight, through time. It binds you. When you were younger, you thought the mess was just food, just tradition. But now, you know, it is where boys are made into men, where bonds are forged. You remember your first night. You were 15. You had trained for years. You were thin, but hard. You had earned a place. They let you sit. They watched you eat. You could feel their eyes on your hands, your posture, your portion size. You did not speak. They did not smile, but they let you stay. That was the beginning. Now you are 30. You have sat at this mess every night for more than a decade. You know each man's gait, the way he breathes, the way he chews, the rhythm of his voice. You know who limps, who snores, who grinds their teeth. You do not love them, but you would die for them, and they for you. Sometimes a new boy joins, wide-eyed, lean, nervous. He sits too fast. He eats too quickly. He wipes his mouth with his sleeve. The older men do not correct him. They let the space teach him, and slowly he learns to slow down, to watch, to match rhythm. The mess teaches that. It teaches waiting. It teaches sameness. It teaches the absence of indulgence. There are no sauces, no sweet things, no excess, only what is needed, and sometimes that is enough. You have heard foreigners mock Spartan food, ambassadors, merchants, visitors from Ionia or Crete. They wrinkle their noses, they laugh, but they do not understand. They do not understand that this place, this bowl of black broth, this long stone bench, it is the spine of Sparta, because in the mess there is no room for softness, only duty, only memory, only repetition. You finish your meal. You wipe the bowl clean with crust. You hand it back. You rise. You nod. You leave in silence. And outside, the night is cold. The stars are sharp. You walk back to your barracks. You listen to your footsteps. You feel the echo of the day in your bones. You lie on your cot. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, the same food, the same bowl, the same words, the the same silence, and in that sameness, in that stillness, you belong. You lie awake some nights, not from fear, not from pain, but from habit, from the rhythm of days that never truly change. You think of the bowl, the bench, the same oil lamp hanging above the hearth. You think of the old man who used to sit across from you, his fingers thick, calloused, always eating slowly, always watching. He died 2 winters ago. His place now filled by another, a younger man, but you still glance at that spot, sometimes forgetting, sometimes expecting to see him in the mess. Memory sits beside you. The walls are plain, not decorated, Spartan stone, cool to the touch. One small window lets in a shaft of light during the day. It cuts across the floor, the same angle every time, the same shadow. A boy once asked, "Why are there no colors here? Why no carvings, no painting?" And an elder replied, "Because the color is in the silence. The mess is your second home, but it is not warm. It is not indulgent. It asks for your loyalty, not your comfort." It was said, "A man who cannot endure black broth is not worthy to endure hardship." That strength must begin in the gut, in the act of swallowing what others cannot. You do not know if that is true, but you do know that night after night you came back. You filled your bowl. You nodded to your brothers. You kept to the ritual. There is something sacred in monotony. There is something powerful in not being asked what you want, because want is dangerous in Sparta. Desire creates cracks. Preference creates conflict. Indulgence creates softness. So you let go of want, and instead you eat what is given. You take what is yours. You speak only what must be spoken. Sometimes there are visiting soldiers from other Peleus, from the Peloponnese, from distant coasts. They ask, "Where is the feast? Where is the drink?" You shake your head. You offer them broth. You watch them swallow. Their faces twist. They blink hard. You say nothing, because they will leave, but you will remain, and that is the point. One night, a Helot boy served the food, thin, quiet, careful with the ladle. His hands trembled. He did not look at you. Later, he spilled a drop on the floor. No one shouted. No one moved, but he did not return. The next night, another boy stood there, different face, same ladle. No words passed between the men at the table, but the silence thickened, settled deeper into the stone, because the mess remembers. The Helots serve. They cook, they clean, but they do not sit. They do not eat here. They are present, but not included. Like shadows, like wind, they pass, they work, but they never belong. This is the line between power and its cost, between unity and division. You have never questioned it. Not openly, not aloud, but in the quiet of night you wonder. You wonder if they dream of eating what you eat. Even this, even the bitter broth, even the sameness, because even sameness can feel like power when you are shut out of it. Once a month, there is a vote, a secret vote. Every man in the mess casts a token, black or white, for new candidates to join. You must be chosen by all. One black token denies you. It is not a punishment. It is not spoken of, but it ends the path. You remember the face of the boy who was turned away. He was strong, sharp, his eyes full of fire, but someone voted no. And so, he never sat with you again. No one ever told you why, and that is how it works. In Sparta, explanation is weakness. Reason is reserved for the gods. A man simply is, or is not, and the mess does not forget. There are rules unwritten, traditions handed down by posture, by glance, by silence. You once reached for the bread too early. The elder beside you placed a hand on your wrist. Not harsh, but firm. You waited after that, and eventually you stopped needing reminders, because time bends men. It sculpts them without hammer or flame. It wears down resistance like a river wears down stone, and in that slow erosion, the city becomes stronger. The mess makes Spartans, not the battlefield, not the agoge, not even the laws, but the repetition, the ritual, the knowledge that tonight's broth will taste the same as last week's, and next month's, and next year's. It does something to you. It makes you endure, not for glory, but because you have already endured. Because to sit here, night after night, in the same place, eating the same thing, listening to the same quiet voices, is the longest war of all. You do not win it in one battle. You win it across 1,000 bowls, 1,000 silences, 1,000 days of sameness. And when you die, another man will sit in your place. He will eat the same broth. He will chew the same bread. He will learn the silence. And he will belong, because in the mess, you are not remembered by name. You are remembered by presence, by discipline, by the way you held your bowl, by the way you waited to speak, by the way you left no crumb behind. And when the city crumbles, when the stones lie cracked beneath the sun, when only dust remains, the mess will be a memory in the air, a stillness, a rhythm, the sound of eating, of breathing, of belonging, that never truly leaves. The sun does not change. It still rises over the Tagitus peaks. It still casts its golden arc across the Eurotas valley. It still glows on the stones of Sparta. But something is missing. The clang of the xiphos, the call of the elders, the dust of young boys running drills, the sharp rhythm of lives cut into obedience, gone. It did not end in a single day. There was no great final battle, no fire, no falling gates. Instead, Sparta faded, slowly, quietly, like breath on a mirror. Once, you could hear the footsteps echo in the training grounds at dawn. Once, shields lined the walls, spears waited at attention. Once, the agoge sent boys into the cold night, barefoot, hungry, determined. Now the training field lies empty. The dust settles undisturbed. The wooden dummies rot under the sun. The walls still stand, but the rhythm inside them has stopped. There is no shout, no drill, no punishment, only the wind, only the birds, only the hush of a place that has forgotten its voice. How does a city like Sparta fall? Not by siege, not by slaughter, but by stillness. It begins when the enemies do not come, when the allies withdraw, when the war ends, when peace settles in like an unwanted guest, and the machine that fed on discipline and fear finds nothing to bite without conflict. What is a Spartan? The agoge produced warriors, not thinkers, not poets, not farmers, not merchants. When war waned, so did purpose. The Spartan economy was not built to thrive in peace. Its citizens were not taught to trade. Its young were not trained to innovate. They were trained to obey, to fight, to die. But death without battle is strange, and obedience without orders turns to silence. The Helots watched, waited. They had always waited, for centuries, serving, suffering, surviving. Now they saw fewer patrols, fewer overseers, fewer eyes. They began to move more freely, to speak more loudly, to imagine something different. Some fled, some stayed, some rose. Sparta, hollowed out from within, could not stop them, not entirely. The state that had once crushed resistance with shadows and whispers had lost its voice. Its sons were fewer, its laws brittle, its myth heavier than its strength. Even the black broth went sour. The communal messes, once the heart of unity, grew sparse. Men stopped attending. Excuses grew common. The ritual unraveled. When a man can eat alone, he begins to think alone. When he thinks alone, he begins to doubt. The ephors passed new laws. They tried to restore the rhythm, but the drumbeat no longer echoed. The young grew weary of obedience. The old spoke of glory, but their voices trembled. No new victories, no spoils, no renown, just stories and dust. The land itself began to change. Crops grew without hands to tend them. Fields once worked by Helots were left fallow. Wild olives pushed through cracks. Vines curled over stones. Nature does not wait. It creeps. It climbs. So do memories. So do memories. One day, a boy wandered into the old training yard. He found a broken spear, lifted it. It crumbled in his hands. He laughed. It was nothing to him, just a stick. He did not know the oath. He did not know the pain. He did not fear the silent eyes of the elders. He was free, but he was not Spartan. The walls were still there, but the city was gone. Sparta lived in stories now, told by others, sung by poets, shaped by those who had never seen the mess hall, who had never tasted the broth, who had never walked barefoot in the frost. And in their stories, Sparta was glory, Sparta was courage, Sparta was fire. But the truth is quieter. Sparta was silence, the silence of boys who never came home, the silence of women who buried sons, the silence of helots who served, of fear. Now, that silence remains. You can still walk the stones. You can trace the outlines of barracks. You can sit where men once dined. You can touch the sun-warmed wall. You can listen, and if you wait long enough, you might hear it. Not a voice, not a shout, but something softer, the weight of absence, the echo of lives lived without softness, of pride forged into iron, of a city built not for beauty, not for pleasure, but for control. And when that control faded, so did the city. No rebellion brought it down, no foreign sword, just time, time and silence. And now, the stones rest under the sun, still, quiet, listening. They do not speak, but they remember. The sun still rises. It spills softly over the peaks of Mount Taygetus. It warms the wide valley of the Helots. It touches the stone foundations, and the walls, and the fields. But the city no longer moves once. This place rang with the sound of discipline, the sharp bark of orders, the slap of bare feet against packed earth, the hiss of breath in the cold air, the hush that followed command. Now it is still. You can walk the length of the old training yard. The footprints are gone. The spear racks are empty. The statues tilt where no one looks. No one sweeps the ground. No one shouts. The rhythm of Sparta has stopped. Not all at once, not in a single cataclysm, but slowly, like a fire that dies for lack of wood, like a river that dries in the summer heat. The fall of Sparta did not come from outside. It came from within. It began when war ceased to feed the machine. The Peloponnesian War ended. Allies drifted. Enemies quieted. No great campaigns to command the youth. No conquests to replenish the soul. Sparta needed war. War was purpose. War was fuel. Without it, the gears no longer turned. The agoge continued. For for a time, boys still gathered at 7, still slept on reeds, still stole food, still hid bruises. But the world had changed. What were they preparing for? The battles were fewer, the borders quieter, the oaths felt thinner. Some began to question, quietly, in private. Others walked away. The communal messes began to empty. Black broth left cold in its bowls. The rhythm of shared eating, of shared life, frayed. Men made excuses, tended farms, met in secret, ate with their wives. The ties that held the warrior class together began to weaken, not from rebellion, not from ambition, but from wariness. The laws remained, but the spirit waned. Sparta had not taught its people to adapt, only to endure, only to repeat, only to submit. And when the world asked something new of them, they did not know how. Trade shifted, neighboring cities grew, ideas moved, coins clinked in Athenian stalls. Philosophers spoke under porches. In Sparta, silence, no debate, no currency, no writing beyond what was necessary. A people trained to hold a line, now unsure which direction to face. And all the while, the Helots watched. They had watched for centuries, working the fields, raising the grain, baking the bread, pouring the wine, always unseen, always beneath. But even shadows shift when the light fades. With fewer patrols, fewer controls, the Helots stretched, whispered. Some vanished into the hills, some stayed and claimed space, some resisted in quiet, careful ways. And Sparta hollowed, brittle, could not respond. Its system was built on pressure. Remove the pressure, and everything sags once. Spartan boys crept through the wild with daggers, allowed, encouraged, to murder Helots in silence. It was a ritual, a culling, a terror. Now, the boys did not go. The Helots no longer feared the knife in the dark. What happens when fear dissolves? The bond unravels. Even within the Spartiates themselves, cracks widened, inheritance grew tighter. Fewer men owned enough land to remain citizens. Their numbers shrank, their gatherings more desperate. Once there were 8,000, then 1,000, then less. A society meant to dominate, now struggling to sustain itself. The women, strong in their own way, raised sons with pride, sent them off with firm words. Come back with your shield, or on it. But fewer sons returned, then fewer sons were born. The birth rate collapsed. So too did the stories. The glory faded, the songs stilled, the flags no longer lifted. Even the temples felt emptier. The rituals performed by habit, not by fire. And the walls, still without towers. Sparta never needed them. They had said, "Our men are our walls." But now the men were fewer, and the walls grew old. Time crept in. Lichens covered the stone. Birds nested in the cracks. Wild goats wandered where drills once thundered, and still the sun rose. A traveler arrived one spring morning. He had heard of Sparta all his life. In plays, in songs, he expected greatness. He found quiet. He stood in the heart of the city, stretched his hands, and listened. Only wind and the rustle of trees. The traveler walked the length of the Eurotas. He saw old columns. He saw what might have been a barracks, what might have been a court. He could not tell. He sat by a wall, a stone loosened by time, and ran his hand over the surface. It was smooth, worn by fingers, worn by waiting. Here, someone once leaned. Here, someone once stood guard. Here, someone once waited for the morning call. Now the stone waits alone. Even the mountains seem quieter. No echoes of training cries, No chance, no march, just sun and wind and the slow movement of time. This is how Sparta ends. Not with a siege, not with betrayal, but with emptiness, with lives too tightly wound to bend, with laws too rigid to hold, with hearts too closed to change. Now the world moves past it. Ships sail without Spartan names. Coins bear other cities. Statues rise in other lands. But here, in this valley, the stones remain, still warm in the sun, still firm underfoot, still watching. They do not speak, but they remember every oath, every bruise, every command, every silence. And now you stand among them, listening, not for glory, not for violence, but for the quiet truth that everything, even strength, even pride, even Sparta, ends. And in the end, it leaves behind not an empire, not a ruin, but a whisper shaped like discipline and fear and memory and silence. The stones remain, scattered in the sun, softened by wind, cracked by time. Still they stand, still they remember. You have walked through Sparta, through its fields, through its dust, through its echo. You have seen the boy taken from his home, taught to obey, taught to endure. You saw him fight, you saw him steal, you saw him learn silence. You watched him grow. You walked beside the King Leonidas, not the hero of legend, but the man, quiet, thoughtful, tired. You saw his feet blister. You heard his breath catch in the morning cold. You felt the dread in his bones as the pass narrowed and the enemy came. You looked beyond the Spartans to the Helots, the hands beneath every harvest, the shadows behind every stone. You saw how they were used, controlled, watched, and how they endured. You stood among the women, bold, strong, raised with pride, raised for purpose, yet always expected to serve the machine, to birth the state, the ritual of food, of talk, of silence. And finally, you walked through the end, the stillness, the slow unraveling, when Sparta no longer marched, when the boys no longer whispered, when even the walls grew quiet. All of it, a world shaped by purpose, a world forged in discipline, a world that forgot how to bend. Now you drift above it. The valley fades, the stone grows soft, the names grow faint, but something remains, not glory, not fear, not war, something else, a trace, a breath, a pause in history. Sparta is no longer a city, it is a memory, a lesson, a shadow, not one of greatness, but of what greatness costs. In the end, they taught their sons to be unbreakable, and so they broke. Now the birds sing where orders once rang. Now the wind stirs dust where spears once gleamed. Now the silence is all that speaks, and you are far from that place, far from the past, but you carry the feeling, the rhythm, the slow weight of stone, the hush of waiting, the calm of finality. Let it drift with you, let it slow your breath, let it settle in your bones. This has been your journey through Sparta, through control, through collapse. You are safe now. You are still. Close your eyes. The voices are fading. The sandals no longer move. The dawn has passed, and dusk is here. The stones do not ask. They do not accuse. They only wait and watch. So rest, like they rest, without burden, without fear, just quiet, just sleep. The land is still. The sky is wide. And the stones of Sparta lie where they have lain for centuries, shaped by hand, weathered by sun, softened by silence. You have walked with the Spartans, felt the gravel shift beneath bare feet, felt the discipline pressed into every step. You have seen their world, and now it begins to fade, but not all at once, not with fanfare, not with the roar of collapse, just slowly, quietly, like all things do. Sparta's memory lingers, not in monuments, not in stories of greatness, but in the spaces between, in the way the wind bends the grass, in the way old paths vanish into dust. You remember the boy, taken from his mother, given to the state, taught not to cry, taught not to complain, taught not to want, only to endure. He fought, he starved, he learned to sleep in cold places, to trust only in his own strength, to expect no softness, to forget the warmth of home. And you remember what he became, one among many, forged in silence, forged in struggle. You walked beside the king, not the king of tales, but the man. Leonidas, burdened, measured, aware of the weight on his shoulders, aware of the eyes on his back. He did not shout, he did not boast, he led, and in that quiet he walked toward his end, where the Helots lived, where the hands behind every harvest moved unseen. They were always there, and never free, tilling the soil, carrying the stones, cooking the food, bearing the burden. Their stories seldom told, but their silence was full of endurance, of quiet resistance, of lives lived in the margins. You stood among the women, bold, strong, Spartan from birth, raised to command, to speak without fear, to run, to throw, to think, and yet their lives too were shaped by duty, by pressure, by the demand to produce sons, to give their bodies to the system, to the war. In the halls of the mess, you tasted sameness, night after night, black broth, rough barley, sparse words, repetition, ritual. It was not just food, it was a forging, a test, a confirmation that you belonged, that you were hardened, that you had no softness left. And then you saw it all fade, not in fire, not in one final stand, but in time, as the Helots rose, as the allies left, as the young stopped returning. Sparta did not fall, it unraveled, brick by brick, belief by belief, in silence, in drought, in dust. Now there are no voices, only echoes. The stones do not speak, but they remember every step, every command, every loss. And you carry those echoes with you, not as weight, not as burden, but as a whisper from a world long gone. Sparta was not eternal. It never claimed to be. It sought strength, but not forever. And in that, it tells us something. That strength without change becomes fragility. That discipline without love becomes cruelty. That unity without care becomes silence. And now you may rest, far from the cries, far from the drills, far from the stone floors. You are not 7 years old. You are not watched. You are not judged. You are free to exhale, free to slow down. The night settles around you like a cloak, like a shield, like something gentle. The stars over Sparta are the same. The sky has not changed. Only the names, only the footsteps. The fields still stretch, quiet, untouched. The hills still rise, dark against the night. And the river still moves, winding, timeless, cool. Sparta no longer needs defending. It no longer commands. It no longer fears. Its purpose is spent. Its stories complete. And so we leave it, gently, step by step, breath by breath. We return from its shadows. We walk back, through the pass, through the fields, through the years, until we are here, in the now, in the quiet, and in this moment there is peace. Let it fill you. Let it loosen your hands. Let it soften your breath. You have journeyed far. You have seen much. Let it settle now. No more drills, no more orders, no more stones. Only rest, only stillness, only sleep. You are safe, you are home, you are whole. Let the winds of Laconia fade. Let the hills grow distant. Let the names grow soft. Sleep now, and if the echoes return, let them pass through you like waves, like dreams, like the hush of an old story told one last time. Close your eyes. Let go. Good night.